I'm Jennifer of Celtic Knot Crochet, and today in this video I'll be showing you how to make the quick and elegant crochet earrings. These earrings are very easy and you don't need to know very many stitches to complete them. In this video I'll be showing you all the supplies that you need, and I'll show you how to do each stitch and how to put the earring together with some basic jewelry techniques. For this project, you'll need to know how to single crochet, half double crochet, double crochet, and slip stitch. So let's get started. And remember, if you like this project, please give us a thumbs up and don't forget to click to subscribe so you can see more tutorials like this one. First, let's go over the crochet supplies that you'll need. I am using size 10 cotton crochet thread. I have a lot in my stash. You'll see that it is very thin. So this does take some getting used to working with this yarn, but I assure you if you practice, you'll do just fine. You could also practice these stitches with larger yarn and a larger hook until you get the hang of the stitches, and then you can work your way down to this size thread. Size 10 cotton crochet thread. Any color would work. These are the colors I chose. Then you'll also need a size 1.5 millimeter crochet hook, and that's the hook right there. It works very nicely with this size yarn. And then I also like to use a small yarn needle or tapestry needle. Sometimes you can find these in the sewing section of your local craft store as an embroidery needle. You see how it has a smaller eye and it's thinner than your typical yarn needle. That's just because this project is small, and a bigger yarn needle, like I usually like to use, would wreck your stitches and wouldn't fit in there nicely. So that's what I recommend for that. Now let's go over the jewelry supplies. The different pieces that go into a piece of jewelry like this are called findings. So the main piece that you'll need is this teardrop hoop that I found at Hobby Lobby. You can find links to all of the supplies in the description below. It says it's a 38 millimeter teardrop hoop, and if you look closely you can see that there is a ring on top, and that's to attach this ear wire so it can go through your ear, and then this second ring right here, and that's where we're going to hang the bead element. Now if you find something that's similar but not exactly to this, I will explain how you can adjust it so it still comes out looking nice for your size hoop. You'll also need 2 head pins. Head pins are these long sewing needle like pins, but they aren't pointy at the end. They're blunt on the end, and on one side they have this head like the head of a pin. These are about 2 inches long, and that's what you'll want. If you'd rather not use these head pins for the bead element, there is another option where you can just use some of the thread that you used to crochet around the finding, and I'll show you how to do that as well. But in order to move some of these pieces of wire, you'll need some jewelry pliers, and then these jewelry cutters, wire cutters. They're delicate ones that aren't absolutely necessary, but they really help with one piece of this project when you're working with these head pins. And then as far as beads go, I just looked through my stash and found a whole bunch of different shaped beads. So the teardrop shape looks really nice with the teardrop finding, as you can see there. But then I also used, if you look at some of my examples, you can see I used some pearls, and then I also used some small clear accent beads, even some seed beads. See how small those are, and they help add interest. So it is really up to you how you want to design your bead element. You just want to make sure that the pieces will fit inside your teardrop hoop. Our first step into making these earrings is to crochet right onto this teardrop hoop finding. Now, since this is very small, I made a large crude replica for you where you could see the loop on the inside top and the outside top, and then the slight teardrop shape. You're going to want to put your slip knot on your hook, and then you're going to work around the teardrop shape by single crocheting around the wire. So to do that, you'll insert your hook into the middle, yarn over behind the wire, pull up a loop, then yarn over and pull through two. And then I like to snug it up on the wire like that. So I'll show you again. You put your hook into the center of the hoop, yarn over behind the wire, pull up the loop, two loops on your hook, yarn over, pull through both loops, and then snug it up. And you're going to work 45 of those single crochets. Now, if your hoop is bigger than mine, then you'll want to do a multiple of 5. So I recommend that if yours is a little bit bigger than mine, that you'll go up in increments of 10. So that way you'll have an even number of the scallops on one side and the other side. So for mine, I have 1, 2, 3, 4 scallops on this side, and 1, 2, 3, 4 scallops on that side, with one big one in the center at the bottom. So in order to make yours fit all the way around, you can do 45 single crochets if yours is about the size of mine. If you would like to do one that's bigger, then start with 55 and go from there, 65, 75, and you'll see with each 10 extra stitches, you'll have one extra scallop on either side. So I continue around, working the single crochet around, making sure I snug it up until I have 45. Here you can see that I've done 45 single crochets all the way around my larger hoop. I actually adjusted the size a bit so it fits just right, and I'm going to cut about 6 inches out and fasten off. So I yarn over and pull through, make a tight knot, and now I'm going to do a second round, and I'm going to work in the same direction that I did before. So if you're left-handed, you did yours around this way, and you'll pick up on this side and work around this way. You'll want to put your slip knot on your hook again. Now, I did not do these in 2 colors, but maybe you want to do round 1 in a black and then round 2 in a different color. So what you'll do is you'll find that first stitch from round 1, you'll insert your hook into that first stitch, yarn over, pull through the stitch and through the loop on your hook to make a slip stitch. Next, you're going to skip the next stitch and you're going to work into the one after that, and you're going to do 3 half double crochets. So yarn over, put my hook in to the stitch, yarn over, pull up a loop, 3 loops on my hook, yarn over, pull through all 3. And I'll do that 2 more times in that same stitch. Yarn over, hook in, yarn over, pull up a loop, 3 loops on my hook, yarn over, pull through all 3. Then I skip the next stitch and I'm going to put a slip stitch in the one after that. Oh, I want to make sure I go through both loops. And that creates that first scallop. and that took 5 stitches. So that's why you want to do this in increments of 5. So again, if your loop is bigger than mine and you did 55 stitches around, 55 single crochets, then you're going to have 5 little scallops on each side. So you'll want to repeat this 4 more times. Because I did the 45, I'm going to repeat it just 3 more times so that I have 4 scallops. 1, 2, 3, 4. So you repeat what we just did as many times as you want on this side based on how many single crochets you did all the way around. So for every 10 more single crochets, you'll have 1 more scallop on each side before you get to the big one at the bottom. So I'll do the stitch pattern one more time for you. Slip stitch into the next stitch, skip the next stitch, and then 3 half double crochets in the stitch after that. 1, 2, 3, then skip the next stitch and slip stitch in the stitch after that. Now I've completed the 4 scallops, and each of them took 5 stitches, and now I'm ready to do the larger scallop at the center bottom. So I'm going to skip the next 2 stitches, and then I'm going to put 5 double crochets in the stitch after that. Double crochet as you yarn over, put your hook in to that 3rd stitch from where you left off, and yarn over, pull through 2 twice. Now as you can see here, this stitch is kind of a little big. So to work on that issue, I'm going to pull this working loop on my hook as tight as I can and try to keep everything nice and snug, especially for that first stitch. And that made it a little better. So you might want to do that when you work on yours. And I'm going to work 4 more stitches. Yarn over, hook in, yarn over, pull up a loop, 3 loops on our hook, yarn over, pull through 2, through 2. When you crochet several stitches into one stitch, it creates this fan look because the stitches have nowhere to go but out. Then we skip the next 2 stitches, 1, 2, and then I'm going to slip stitch in the stitch after that. So here you can see the 4 half double crochet scallops and then the 1 larger double crochet scallop. Now I'm going to work 4 more half double crochet scallops up this side. So I'm going to skip 1 stitch and then do 3 half doubles in the next stitch. Then skip the next stitch and slip stitch in the one after that. And that's my first little scallop finished. Then I would repeat, slip stitch in the next stitch, skip the next stitch, 3 half doubles in the one after that, then skip the next stitch and then slip stitch in the one after that. And I do that 2 more times until I get to the end of my loop. Now I've completed the crochet stitches around the loop, And I'm going to cut the yarn and fasten off like so. And I have these ends that I'm going to show you how to weave in. So one more explanation for how to adjust this for different sizes. You're going to have a number of stitches here that are divisible by 5. Then you're going to have 5 at the bottom, and then you're going to have another number that's the same as this number that is also divisible by 5. So in my example, I have 20 stitches here, 5 on the bottom for the big scallop, and then 20 stitches again on the side. So if you have a different size, you'll just be increasing each of these sides by 5 stitches. So if yours is a little bigger, you'll want to maybe have 30 stitches on this side, 30 on this side, and then keep that 5 in the middle. So 30 plus 30 plus 5 is 65 stitches. I hope this helps you make it a different size in case you can't find the same findings I did. So let me show you how to weave in the ends. Again, this is larger yarn, so I'm using my larger tapestry needle. But what I did, see how the stitches are sliding away from these top loops? So what I did was to make sure that the stitches were nice and stretched out around the loop and didn't shrink down. I took the yarn tail with my yarn needle and went through the top loop and sewed them through the stitches like so. Just pass through that first stitch. And I did that a couple times. And then after I did that a couple times, I went through one of the stitches on the back and put my needle back through that loop I just made through the wire loop. And then I hid the stitches, I hid the yarn tail inside the stitches like I normally would in any crochet project. And I went down maybe through a couple scallops, making sure it didn't show on the front. And then I just trim the yarn tail like so. And that way, see how it keeps the stitches nice and taut and stretched around the finding loop. Without it, they're going to sag down. So I wanted to make sure that they stayed up. And you can see on this example here. And I just wove in the yarn tails in the back and clipped them. Now let's work on adding the bead elements. Now if you would like to use the head pin, I'm going to show you how to do that first. And it works really nicely if you put one of the tiny seed beads on first. Remember, there's a little stopper on the bottom of this head pin to prevent the beads from falling off. So I like to put a tiny seed bead there and then put on the teardrop bead and then maybe a crystal bead like that and another small bead. And then I'll want to check that that fits inside my loop, and it does, with a little room to spare, which is good. Then to create a loop on the top of the head pin, you're going to want to first push all the beads as far down as they'll go. Then take your jewelry pliers and pinch the wire so you're right next to that last bead. Then you're going to push the wire over into a 90-degree angle like so. Then you're going to let go and put your pliers back onto the wire and move it just over slightly. And then you're going to take while you're pinching this wire, you're going to take the wire and wrap it over the top of the pliers, like so. And if I take the pliers out, I've just created this small loop right there. And then this is where these wire cutters come in handy. I can use these to make a nice clean cut to trim off that excess. And now I have a bead element. And you see that it's a little crooked. It's very easy to fix that. I just grab onto the top and straighten out the bead element. And then by making sure that this hole is open enough, if not, you just pull it towards you like so. See, like that. And I hook it onto that top loop. So if you bring it up through the back and then hook it on through like that. So did you see how I did that? So I opened up the loop and then I come up from the back through the center, and then I can easily latch it onto that center hook, center loop, and then I just use my pliers to close the gap in that bead element. And now I have a bead element that hangs down inside my loop. And again, this gets easier with practice, and if you don't like how it turns out, you can clip it with the wire cutters and try another one. The head pins usually come at least 50, maybe even 100 to a pack, so you'll have plenty to practice with. And then in the same way, you're going to add the ear wire. The ear wire has a similar loop on the bottom, and I grab onto the side of it and again press it towards me so that it opens up like that. See how it's opening up sideways? And I put it onto that top loop and close up the loop on the ear wire like I did before. Just use those pliers to close it up. And there you go for the jewelry elements. Now, one thing I will say is you want to make sure that when you add on your bead elements that you have the right side facing of your pretty crocheted project. So see how this looks finished and clean, and then if you turn it over, see how that looks just much more bumpy. Maybe you like that side and you want that side to be the front, but as I intended it, this is the back. So when you hang your elements and your ear wire, make sure that the ear wire is hanging so when it goes in your ear, the front or the right side of your project is showing. So you might have to experiment with that and make sure you have it all set so it hangs nicely. Now, if you don't want to use the head pin and the pliers, you'll need pliers to attach the ear wire, but you can use just the thread that you used in your project. So I like how coral and mint green look together, so you could see how I just used the thread. So I'll show you how to do that. Now, another reason why I chose to do the thread for this one was because this teardrop bead actually has its hole on the top. It doesn't have a center hole like my other ones did. This here is one of the best inventions for threading beads when you're working in crafts. It's called a dental floss threader, and yes, it's used for dental floss, but it also can be very handy when trying to thread beads onto yarn or thread. So I use this threader and I go through the bead, and this can slide through that small hole very easily. And now I have my bead secured on the thread, and then I bring the two ends together, put it back through the threader, and then I can put on a couple more beads on top. And then I would just tie it in a knot to that loop that we used before. I tied it in a knot, and then I hid the yarn tails in the back. And again, if you want to use the same color and then you hide the yarn tails, you won't even see them. Another point I wanted to make though about using thread is I highly recommend using a stopper if your teardrop bead has a center hole like this one does. So if your bead has a center hole and you don't want to use the head pin, then you have to use a stopper bead at the bottom. So I just go through, down through the top of the bead with the yarn. See, there it is. Then I thread on a smaller bead. I'm using a big one so you can see well, but I would use a smaller one normally. And so now I have the teardrop bead and then the next bead woven through there. And then I'm going to use the threader and go back through the bottom of the teardrop bead. And that creates that nice stopper, and you can still use the thread for a center hole teardrop bead. So that's just a little tip for you if you'd rather not do the head pin and you want to use the thread, but you have to be aware of where the holes are for all of your beads. And there you have it. That's how you make the quick and elegant crochet earrings. I hope you enjoyed making this project. Please leave a comment below telling us which color you decided to make, or better yet, you can send us a photo. You'll see my email in the description below. Would love to see your projects. I hope you enjoyed this tutorial, and I hope you enjoy giving these or wearing these. Happy crocheting!